Good afternoon, and welcome to another exciting edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. This is your host, Michael Cross here, and I hope you stick with us the entire time because we're going to deal with a whole bunch of very interesting aspects of television. And I hope I can put this into a way that you've not heard it put before. Because I know there's a lot of people out there, especially those that listen to alternative media, who really are not that big into television. Although their families might be addicted to it. And yeah, I'll use the term addiction even though I know it's not actually a psychological addiction in the pure sense. But television itself is the drug that seems to pervade our society. I would say that, rather than Karl Marx's contention that religion was the opiate of the masses, I would actually say that television is the opiate of the masses. Hey, I would go even beyond the opiate. I would go into a much higher class drug, something that would be much more powerful, and I would actually say much more damaging, ultimately, than opiates during Marx's time. Now, what I would like to do, though, is I would like to make the contention that television is your family's worst enemy. Now, I don't want to say that television is totally 100% evil. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it has a lot of good uses and can serve very constructive purposes. I know that the guy that is seen as responsible for the invention of TV, Philo Farnsworth, he felt that it would bring in an era of enlightenment, that people who were isolated in their various places around the world could be introduced to topics that were more educational, that television could open up the world. And yes, indeed, the television does open up the world. However, if we place it in the context of modern society today, I'm not sure Mr. Farnsworth would have liked where it's gone. In fact, he might have gone ahead and busted his tubes if he had seen where his invention would take modern society. So let's just go ahead. I'm inspired to do this because yesterday I read an article in a publication called India Today, and it was July 15th, 2015, and it said that pornography was going to explode really soon because more and more and more people are getting more advanced smartphones, and that this explosion would be biggest in the United States, that the usage of the hits on porn sites would just expand incredibly in the next decade. And the thing is that I'm sure there's a lot of parents who read this article and they were like, oh my gosh, how do I protect my kids? How do I protect them? I mean, this is terrible. Well, the thing is, I would say that for the most part, television is just as damaging as your kids looking at pornography. Now people are like, what? No, that can't be true. I don't want my kids seeing this and this and this. But yet, the messages that come across TV today, for the most part, and I'm not talking about educational networks, though they have their own propaganda, to be sure. For instance, I like my kids to watch animal shows and stuff like that and learn more about science and nature and so forth. But even those shows have their little agenda where they come on and it's like, oh, humans are expanding their habitat and destroying the wild and, increasing populations and that sort of thing. So or you'll have a very strong push for evolution in programs that you're thinking, hey, this has nothing to do with evolution. But still, you'll get that push. But in modern TV prime time type programming, the messages that come across are, maybe a little more subtle, but they are more pervasive. They are more influential. And what I would like to ask is this, when it comes to TV viewing. Would you, as a parent, okay, let's pretend that instead of Mormon missionaries that come to your door and knock on your, ask if you want to learn more about their church, a very admirable thing. These young men are out, spending their own money. Actually, they don't get paid to do that, to share their ideas about religion. Let's pretend that instead there was an army of people who were paid missionaries. Yeah, they did the same thing. Get on the bicycles, go around the neighborhood. But they were paid, and they paid good money. And they would go door to door, knocking on door, hello, I'm from the secular, liberal, left of center, whatever it is. I can't even think of an organization right now. But let's say they're the missionaries of left-wing propaganda. And they knock on your door and say, could we come in and share the good news of left-wing ideas on family, economics, and the way of looking at life? And while we're here, we'll make sure to put down your religion. We will make sure to only say good things about our people and make all the people that we disagree with, including you, Mom and Dad, we will make sure that you're presented in a bad light. Can we spend a few hours with your kids each night? We'll just come in and we'll talk with them and share our ideas and see if we can convince them that they should join our political movement. How many of you would let someone come in and spend that much time with your kids every day? Or would you even want them to come in at all? No. Most people would say, no. I'm the parents. I teach my kids. Goodbye. See you later. But you know what? You do pay. You're actually the one who pays to have people come in. You buy a TV set. You buy the products that are advertised. And you let television indoctrinate your children. And, it's as if you were bringing someone in. And not only would they sit, the analogy I use with the people coming in and sitting down with your kids and trying to convince them and you to adopt their view of life. The thing is that they would be very, very amateuristic compared to television, which you have multi-million-dollar movies with wonderful glitzy special effects. You have television series that are very scientifically designed. I mean, I'm not just talking about the way that you present your message so that it comes in subliminally, sometimes not even so subliminally, to the receiver. That's right. In television, that's what you're considered. You're a receiver, or you're a target demographic, or this or that. That's how you're seen by the television industry. And you use science to just create images that flash and catch your attention and hypnotize you into watching the product. Okay? I said the product instead of the program, because ultimately what the television industry is there for is to make money, okay? Secondarily, it's to make sure that they persuade you a certain way. And here's the thing. The analogy of the guy coming to your door and knocking on the door and wanting to come in and persuade you that you should become more left of center. The thing is that you can look it up yourself. Just go on Google and type in political ideology writers TV programs. Okay? Now, I debate sometimes, on the internet with people that are left of center, and they will say, no. The big corporations that own the networks, and yes, there's only 6 major corporations that own almost all media in the United States, but the 6 corporations that own the networks are conservative. But you see, here's the thing. I think what they're looking at is the economic business model conservative ideals. They're not looking at the social policy and social issues, family issues, morality, religion, and these kinds of things. And if you actually take a look at the studies that have been done, again, go on Google, type in political ideology of writers' TV programs, you will find overwhelmingly they are Democrats, they are liberal, okay? They're not going to be, those kind of Democrats, come from a working class background that, are, conservative, but yet on economic things are pro-union. I'm saying they're going to be liberals in the sense of the word, that the kind of people that are out there all the time ripping on tradition. They are going to be urban, okay? They're going to primarily come from cities like Los Angeles, New York, those kinds of places. Most of them don't come from the small towns. And you can kind of see the comic book way that TV series present small towns. I mean, very, very unfair characterizations of the small town life. It's like the people in small towns are dumb. The people in the police in small towns are corrupt. A lot of times if it's a crime drama, you have to bring in the FBI or it's a guy who's a police detective from New York or something who's able to clean up the corruption in the city. That's a political message there. That's a political message that the federal government is there to save you from the local government. But that is part of plots in movies, in TV series all the time. But, of course it's going to be, because the people that are writing these shows, they don't feel so comfortable in small towns and communities if they do actually drive through them. Usually they just fly over them. But they are more comfortable with the large city paradigm of life. They're going to be secular. If they are raised religiously, they're going to be more secular in their viewpoints at that time. And there's a variety of reasons. I'm not going to go really into a psychoanalysis of why you're going to find that people who are writers for TV series and movies and stuff like that are going to be more liberal and secular. But there are some reasons, and some of them deal with just, it's like artists tend to be more liberal. It's not because they are more creative necessarily than conservative people, but they're willing to go into areas that most people wouldn't in regards to their creativity. They're also more likely to, if you're thinking of, let's say if you're a man or woman and you're planning on raising a family and having a house and live in the suburbs, that sort of, you're probably not going to go into those areas in university that are more towards, those areas. You're going to go into more business types of majors. You're not going to go into the social science majors that are more likely to produce people who will be doing those kinds of jobs. And I will note, though, that that's probably a pretty good thing that you go into the majors that you're going to get a job, because it's like sports with the liberal arts. There are some people that make a ton of money with liberal arts background, but majority probably are not going to get something in the field that they're actually studying. Okay, there's just enough there's not that many jobs out there for sociologists and anthropologists and those kinds of people. But anyway, that's a different topic. Now, we got the idea most of the people who produce the things that you watch on TV are very left of center. More left of center than Hillary Clinton. Probably more left of center than Bernie Sanders. But they're going to be more left of center. Second, if they came to your door, knocking on your door, saying, can we come in and persuade your family to become more like us, you'd probably say no. But you invite them in when you watch TV. Now, I want to go to a quote. I love this quote from Edward Bernays, the founder of public relations. Seriously, I do not know why this guy does not get more play when it comes to classes in high schools. This guy should be mandatory reading. You know, if people, I'm going to get into just a few minutes here, how much time the average person spends watching TV. And when you actually put it into perspective, it's like, oh my gosh. You know, I said this to one of my kids. I said, hey, did you know if a person spends this much time watching TV? And I gave him the statistic. I said, her eyes just wide open, like, oh my gosh, I never considered it that way. So anyway, the thing is, why with all the time Americans spend watching TV, and this also goes for other groups of people too, maybe not so much Chinese because they want their kids studying and stuff rather than watching hours and hours of TV. But Edward Bernays, most people do not hear who Edward Bernays is when they are in high school. Okay? Maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know why, because Edward Bernays, I mean, if you go into marketing, you learn about Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays is the founder of our modern culture, if we could say that our modern culture is based on media and advertising and so forth. But I love this quote from Mr. Bernays, and that is, those who manipulate, oh, by the way, if you want to watch a little bit more Bernays, I did a video, an hour-long presentation of the life of Edward Bernays and how he used psychology to manipulate the masses. And you go to my YouTube channel at Michael Cross. You know, it's under Freedom from there's several Michael Crosses on YouTube, but the one that's listed under Freedom from Conscience. Then you'll go to that. Also, check out my website. I have some writings about Bernays. It's michaelcross.net. Okay, just pay a visit there at michaelcross.net. Anyway, here's the quote from Bernays. Here we go. Fanfare, drums rolling. Those who manipulate the unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our taste formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of in almost every act of our lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking. We are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires that control the public mind. Okay? Note how he said that. Our minds molded, our taste formed, our ideas suggested. Okay? Now, most people are like, oh, no way, I think for myself. I just read an article. I don't know if it's really trendy or not, but I've seen on Facebook a few posts about this, that it's really trendy now for some women to decide that they're going to stop shaving their underarms. And it's kind of a way that they can buck the dominant view of fashion and beauty and so forth in society. Regardless of how you feel about the whole issue of women shaving their legs and underarms and that sort of thing, it should be noted that hardly any women in America or Europe shaved before 1915. I looked it up. It was actually quite interesting that it was all part of a Harper's Bazaar media campaign back around 1915 that was encouraging women, since they were starting around 1915 to get into dresses that expose the shoulders. And the idea was that, oh, well, maybe it's a good idea to remove the hair under the arms. And, women before that wouldn't have even thought about it. It'd been like, okay, well, there's hair there. Guys would have thought, okay, well, men, women, they're hairy. But that campaign started the whole idea that it was more beautiful to remove the hair. As World War I came along and there was shortages of fabric, and that coincided also with the idea of, let's be a little bit more daring in what we show. And skirts started going up. Then, of course, it started overlapping with the idea of, hey, maybe remove the hair on the legs too. Now, probably thinking, what's this got to do with television? It's got everything to do with television, because the public perception, in how Bernays would say here, it wasn't that all of a sudden women started going, oh, I hate to have hair on my legs. No, they weren't saying that. They were just like, that's how they lived for thousands of years, for the most part, except for, maybe the upper classes of Egyptian royal society or something like that. The idea was that that's just what nature gave you. But the media was able to change people's attitudes to the point that it eventually shifted to where it was considered almost, I would almost say immoral, in some people's minds, for someone not to shave. In fact, part of the 1960s thing, the hippie revolt, a lot of women, didn't shave then. They just stopped. And so a lot of times we associate hairy women, hippies, that sort of thing. But but the media really, really emphasized this. And then in later years, in the 1990s, thanks to lingerie, commercials that went more mainstream. I remember in the 1970s and 80s, lingerie was considered kind of risque. You would not see it really advertised out there, in mainstream stuff, and made a big deal of. And then that changed. And then all of a sudden, you got the lingerie commercials, you've got pornography, which became more and more accessible to people. And of course, in that industry, hair removal, big thing. And now you got, I saw a razor ad for men, showing a guy shaving his chest, and it's become more and more. You go to the beach, it's summertime, I go to the beach, and I'm like, whoa, there hardly any guys here have hair on their chest. This is all part of a media campaign. And it has been to the point that now if a woman decides, well, I'm just not going to shave my underarms, it's a news story. It's like, oh my gosh, we got to interview her on our daytime TV because this is so freaky. But it's gotten more and more and more mainstream. But no one came up with the idea. I don't think anyone just kind of said, some guy was just like, maybe I should just go ahead and start shaving my chest. I don't like chest hair or something like that. And that's ironic because in the 1960s and 70s, a guy with a big old, hairy chest or something, that was considered sexy. But now, that would be considered unkept. That is media influence, and it goes into everything. The way we comb our hair, the way that we apply cosmetics, the ideas on fashion. And fashion's big because you know what? When they came up with the whole, it used to be people owned one pair of shoes, maybe a couple changes of pants or a couple dresses or something like that. But when fashion got to the mass production level, and this goes into Bernays, but again, look at my stuff up on my YouTube channel if you want a longer description from Bernays. The thing is that fashion, you wound up with clothes that didn't wear out so quickly, especially as we started moving away from jobs that were, agricultural and heavy industry, where that put a lot of wear and tear on your clothes. People started buying more and more and more. Well, the thing is, though, that if you want them to buy more, and it's not going to wear out, what you need to do is you need to have planned obsolescence. Not so much that you design clothes so that they'll just wear out in a year, what you do instead is persuade people that, no, that's so out of fashion. Whenever I go out and buy jogging shoes, they're so freaking expensive now. Yeah, right. They don't even make them in America and Europe anymore. They make them over in Asia. They pay the people hardly anything. And where do they put the money in? Well, it's all into advertising and, stockholders, shareholders, those people. It's not in what you pay the workers. But anyway, the thing is, price of athletic shoes has just through the roof. But what I do is I always go and you go to the outlet places that sell last year's shoes. Because there's some people that would, that was so, 2014. I don't want to wear those. They're athletic shoes. You go running nowadays most people don't go running. But the thing is, it makes you look like you're going running. But ultimately, the public has been hypnotized to believe that you don't wear last year's fashion. That's so out of date. Anyway, though, I want to just point a statistic out, though, before I go on, and I go into some more description of this and discussion. But here's something maybe puts everything in perspective. I found an article in the New York Daily News, March 5th, 2014, on how much time the average American spends watching TV. Now, it should be noted that there are differences demographically. Black people watch TV more than white people. Young people watch a lot less TV than old people. Now, when I say a lot less, compared to the average, but the older you get, the more TV you watch. And I'm just thinking about, again, the guy at the door. Can I come in and speak to you about left-wing ideals and social change? Let's take a look here. The average person, if they spent 2 hours a day watching TV, okay, just 2 hours, come home from work, couple hours on TV, you would spend 30 nonstop days in 1 year, cumulative, in front of your TV set. 30 nonstop days, okay? Day in and day out. You could be on some sort of Air Force amphetamines or something like that and stay up, and just your eyes wide open, or like in that movie Clockwork Orange, have your eyes wired open so you can't close them and you have to sit there and watch what's on the TV. Now, let's look at it more realistically. The average person gets around 7 hours of sleep, or at least they should, but 7 hours of sleep. So we'll look at a day as being a 17-hour day. I should slow down, now for those in public school math. But anyway, just kidding. There's still people that learn math in school in America. Anyway, if it's a 17-hour day, then 2 hours a day watching TV in a whole year, you would spend the equivalent of 43 real day times watching TV. 43 days. That would be like, taking like kids get the summer off. Spending one half of the summer, morning, noon, and night, then go to bed. Morning, noon, and night, and go to bed. Watching television. Okay? 43 days of your life spent watching TV. If you spent 3 hours a day watching TV, that would be 45 cumulative days, days and nights, 45. And the real time, 17-hour days, assumed, would be 64 days in 1 year. Yeah, so if you just spend 3 hours a day, that would be that you spent 64 days of 2014 watching TV. Now, it's 4 hours a day. That would be 61 days, 24-hour day, cumulative days, or 85 real-time days. Whoa, 85 days? But guess what? The average, according to this article, is 5 hours a day. That's right, America. 5 hours a day is the average for watching TV. That translates out to a whopping 76 full day night periods watching TV a year, or 107 real days of 17 hours a day. So in other words, the average American spent 107 days in front of the TV. 107 days watching TV. A third of 2014. A third of 2013. A third of 2012. And they'll spend a third of 2015 in front of the TV. Now, why don't we have education in our schools that deal with how to critically analyze and think around modern media today? It would make sense, wouldn't it? It would, but then again, maybe television serves a very vital function in being, again, the opiate of the masses, to keep the people distracted. I would actually say this. The number one thing that I find objectionable to pornography, going back to the original article that I talked about from the India Today, the number one objection I have to pornography is just like Philip Zimbardo, the famous psychologist, recently pointed out, a lot of young men are becoming socially isolated through gaming and pornography use. They're not going out and essentially finding relationships with other real people. And that's maybe, Japan's already been suffering from a lower birth rate because of this. We're just a little bit further behind Japan when it comes to the application of technology towards relationships. The thing is that it's the relationship aspect, I think, that's the most damaging thing about pornography. And if you go into this thing about porn, you could say that kids, when it comes to telling them don't look at porn, and you expect them not to do that, well, doesn't it make sense that when it comes to either porn or television or something, that you should at least give them reasons why they should maybe avoid it? I mean, that would make sense to me. Just don't tell someone, don't do this. I mean, that's like telling this. I mean, I remember I went to Uganda last year, and oh my gosh, when I found out how many people died of malaria in Uganda, I was like, why am I doing this? But I'd already made the plans. And I read up a lot on how to, avoid mosquitoes in that country, what stuff to put on, what kinds of netting to put up when you go to bed at night. I took every precaution possible, and I was not, even though I was also taking the malaria medicine, it's not totally effective. That's why I was still paranoid about mosquitoes. And I was out in the middle of nowhere one day when I went out on a safari. The thing is that what do you tell someone? When you're in Uganda, watch out for mosquitoes. Okay. Well, what does watch out refer to? Isn't it a good idea to tell the person why they should avoid it? Why they should avoid the mosquito and how to do it? That's why I think it's important to have a little bit of psychology involved when we're we go in and tell our kids, well, don't look at porn. Okay, well, why? Maybe something about like Zimbardo's warnings, or maybe if you see it as kind of the apex of capitalistic exploitation, which in many ways it is, different people will see it in different contexts and therefore maybe avoid it. Or maybe not. Maybe, they won't. But the thing is, at least people should be educated. And when it comes to television, I think it's the same way. You need to kind of know what's out there. If you just sit there and watch something, it's more effective. I'll give you again on the porn thing. Most people, when they see porn, they realize this is nothing more than a fantasy. Okay, these are people paid to act out a fantasy. It's as much a fantasy world as one of these sci-fi or fantasy movies you would see. Okay, with wizards and dragons and that sort of thing. It's just not the way the real world works. And real sexuality for the most part. But most people understand that, at least adults, if they watch this kind of stuff. They understand that's not the way the real world works. But you know what? I saw a poll, I think it was last year, that said that the average American believes that 25% of America is gay and lesbian. And I'm going, what? The articles I read at least point out why. Because you see so much of it on TV. It's discussed so much. It's shown so much. There's so many characters on TV now that for better or for worse, people have the idea that around 25% of the population is gay and lesbian. When actually the statistics are somewhere around, if you're going to look at exclusive gay people, it's around 3% of men and about half that much for women. Although the numbers of women who are bisexual has been rising in the last 15 years. Of course, you could also look at television as maybe being a reason for that. A lot more experimentation and so forth. But women identifying themselves as bisexual has skyrocketed in the under 30 age group. Wonder if that has something to do with all the way it's presented in TV programs that are aimed at young women. No, who knows? But the thing is that television, if you're thinking about this time period here, average American spends 107 real days a year watching TV, nonstop. That must have an influence on the way they look at life. How much time does this person spend in, let's say they're active in a church. And let's say they spend 2 hours per day, 2 hours per day, no, 2 hours per week. If they go every Sunday, 2 hours a week in a church would not even come close to that. It would be, let's see, cumulative days, real time. Now I'm doing this off my head here. That would be 1/7 of the amount of time they would spend on 2 hours a day for, 7 times 4, 5, 35, 6. Yeah, 6. So it would be 6 days real time per year. Okay? 6 days. If they go to church 2 hours per week, every week, they will spend an equivalent of 6 real 17-hour days in church. But they will spend 43 days watching TV. Now, if we assume, I know it's not a really good assumption, but if we assume that when young people go to school that it's values neutral, I know it's not, but let's assume it's values neutral in America, then the time they're out of school and watching all this television, they're getting quite an education there, aren't they? And it is, as if we consider that, think about this. If you're traditional or libertarian, conservative, whatever, you notice how when you watch TV and all of a sudden is something that's said or done that reinforces your values, that all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this is great. This show, this actor, this actress really did a great job here. The reason why it's so, whoa, in your face, fireworks going off and applause and drum rolls and stuff like that, is because it's so rare. It is so rare, and so you notice it. Because most of the time, it's kind of not there, when it comes to traditional values. So, think about that, though. The guy's coming to your door and wanting to teach you all the wonderful things about liberalism. Well, you invite him into your door every day. And you probably have more than just one of him in there, because most people have more than one TV set. A lot of people have, I think it's around an average of 2.5 TVs per household. So, yeah, it's there, and it's doing the whole education process. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's where I'm going to differ from some people. Some people just throw the TV set out. Some people just say, oh, well, let's just get rid of TV. Let's not have the kids watch TV or anything like that. And I don't go for that. I just think, though, that we should be aware. We should make people aware. It's just like with the mosquito analogy. Yeah, sure, I could say, no, I'll never go to Africa ever again. Oh, maybe I will go to Africa again. I don't know. Or South America, or some place where you could get malaria. The thing is that there are precautions you can take. And that's what you should do. Now, what could some of those precautions be? What could some of those precautions be? Well, I know this really can be irritating to some people, but I think it's a very important thing. I think, first of all, I would follow the advice that a professor of mine gave in university, a psychology professor. And he said what he would do with his kids is when a commercial comes on, he not only encourages, but he mandates that his kids at that time, I'm sure they're all grown now, that they mock the commercial. Okay? They mock it. They put it down. They make fun of it. And in that way, yes, it might actually make it more memorable, but at the same time, it delegitimizes it. It creates a situation in which you start seeing and you start teaching the kids that the stuff on TV is not there for their benefit. It's not there to make them smarter. It's not there to make them in real life prettier or more successful. It's there because someone wants you to buy a product in order to make money for themselves. All right? That's why it's there. Now, true, even in alternative media, a lot of alternative media, not here, but a lot of alternative media uses commercials. And it uses commercials in order to make money to stay on the air. Okay? That's just the nature of things. People that work in maybe larger studios, they need to be paid. They can't just, unless they're, rich and just have some spare time. You can't have you got to have some sort of way of making money. And that's true of the networks too. They want to make money. And the people that are advertising the stuff want to make money. Okay? In fact, I don't usually defend televangelists, but I think it's a little unfair when people are saying, well, why do they advertise for money so much on these televangelist shows? Well, they have overhead too. It costs a lot of money to put on a worldwide network. Okay, so they have to do that. Unless, of course, they wanted to get funded by the U.S. government or foundations and so forth. Like a lot of liberal news programs are actually funded that way. And, what comes with that, of course, is strings that are attached to it. Okay? By the way, look up in the London... Here's one thing I really think you should look up. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I think I will. In the London Mirror, you can just type in London Mirror, Terminator, RoboCop, Pentagon, censor. Yeah. London Mirror, Pentagon, RoboCop, Terminator, censor. I find a very, 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 very interesting article about how the entertainment industry and the military-industrial complex have a relationship that you may not be aware of. But you see, here's another thing going on from the commercials and what their purposes are. Movies have a message, and that's not lost on the U.S. government. That's not law. I think that probably the governments from around the world do this kind of thing. I don't know if they do it at the same extent because, of course, Hollywood is the entertainment capital of the world. Okay? But look that article up, and you might be kind of surprised by just how much propaganda influence comes into your programs. I remember I was watching one program. I'm not even going to name the name because it'd just be free publicity. I'm probably sure it's probably not the only one. But I was watching some show. I think my wife just switched it on. Just, channel surfing. You're both tired, long day. It's like, oh, what's on? Channel surfing. And, sometimes you are justified in just vegging out. Hits some TV show in which they're trying to find some criminal of some sort, terrorist or something, and they go and they contact the TSA, and the TSA is like, oh my gosh, they were like, FBI or the CIA the way they were presented, really professional, having all this information, and it was like pure propaganda, yay TSA, they're out there stopping the terrorists or the criminals or whatever. And just watching it, it was just so blatant. I was like, come on, this has to have been influenced by some sort of government directive or something. It was just so over the top. But it's not the only time you see this. And, you watch your TV shows now, and I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch programs like Adam 12 and later SWAT. Remember that one? And SWAT was about, I think it was set in Los Angeles, and, this tactical team that would go after the really, really nasty people. And, yeah, it was the kind of people that, you just didn't want, the police couldn't handle, okay? You needed that SWAT team. And now, you switch on any of these detective shows or anything like that, and they have SWAT teams that look like the vampire SWAT team on Blade 2. They are just so professional and coming down from ropes, and it's like a military operation, and it looks sexy and powerful and cool, because people are, they're sitting there and watching, they're trying to get into this fantasy world. But that's part of a social engineering program. The more you present the idea that whenever something goes wrong, you got to call the SWAT team. People get used to it. People start getting the idea that, if I see the SWAT team in my neighborhood, and, I don't know, maybe some guy, you're not living in a state that legalized marijuana, so, they suspect this guy has a marijuana plant, and so they bring an entire SWAT team over to take him out. Okay? And it starts becoming normal. All right? It's cool. And it's expected. And like I said on a previous show, I went to Turkey in 2001, I think it was 2001. And they'd had some problems with some, Kurdish separatists or something like that. And I saw a policeman with a machine gun. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am definitely not in Kansas. Actually, I've never been to Kansas. But anyway, to use the Wizard of Oz analogy or metaphor or whatever you call it. The thing is that was so different to me. But now in America, cops dressed up in military uniforms with machine guns and tanks and stuff that they got from Iraq. Pretty scary indeed. But it's on the TV, and it's just like, this is the way it is. Remember, you ever see Starship Troopers in the 1990s, the first one? And they have all these propaganda films and stuff. It's supposed to be a fascist future. You watch that now, and you're like, well, that sort of seems like the way the world is today, except we don't have bugs attacking us from another planet. But still, it looks so America today. And, well, first of all, let's get back here. We don't have that much time left. I'm just going to say this. First of all, you should mock the commercials. Now, second of all, analyze the films with your kids. When you're sitting and watching a program, I know sometimes people actually do sit and watch TV together now, and, nowadays, though, everyone's on their iPhones and stuff. Analyze it. Pick it apart. When you see something like the villain, for some reason, has a tattoo of Jesus on his shoulder. I saw that the other day. My daughter was watching a TV show, and the bad guy, who was just about ready to get killed by the good guy, he had this big Jesus tattoo on, and starts talking about God. Why was that in there? I mean, you don't usually see that done on other religions. Well, maybe ask your kids why that's there. Get them thinking, get them questioning. In fact, get yourself questioning. A lot of times people just assume that's the way it is. Now, you may irritate your husband or wife doing it. Okay. That's very possible. That they're going to be, would you stop interrupting the movie all the time? But it's better than just letting the assumption just get in there past the cerebral cortex and directly into the systems of the brain that are associated with emotion. Okay? Human beings are better able to be persuaded using a story than using facts. That's why liberals are so much better at getting elected. I mean, I get so irritated at conservatives. Conservatives that get up there and start saying, well, according to these economic statistics, blah, 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 blah. Liberal gets up there, oh, I met this one lady and her husband had left her and she had to turn to the government for this and blah. And of course, you know what? Everything the conservative just said just went bye-bye. Because the emotion is what gets people persuaded. Okay? No matter how you feel about gay marriage. Okay? If you show a couple, they've been together for 50 years, maybe two men, and they've been together for 50 years, and they finally get a chance to get married. Emotionally, that has a huge impact on the way people are looking at the issue when they see that story. Showing the two 80-year-old guys, all happy that they're able to say that they're married. And so people have to recognize emotion is what persuades people. And if you show TV series in which, if you tell your kids you shouldn't mess around before marriage, you should wait till you have a wedding ring on to get married and have kids. And your TV programs are constantly showing the leading man, leading woman, and the whole thrust of it is that they get in bed together. And when they finally do, it's like this kind of collective yay, from the audience. Then that is teaching something. If it's, like I said here, spend 5 hours a day watching TV. That's 107 days a year. Or if you're getting that message in most of your TV programs and movies and so forth, well, guess what? How is that going to influence? Well, even adults. I'll even say that. Even people that are in their 50s, and they're constantly watching these programs where the husband or the wife is just not there for their spouse, and the spouse meets this wonderful person. and all of a sudden it's like, everyone's like rooting for this adulterous affair. Okay, it's going to influence adults too. Maybe not as quick. Okay, maybe it's not going to be as they may still have their values and say this is wrong, adultery's wrong. But then they'll kind of shut those filters off when they are in a situation where they might be compromised. So I think that actually television in that sense, you've got to question it. You've got to actually get people to where they watch it, they question it. And also understand that it's all made up. I mean, if you have a chance, actually, I don't know if they still do this. It used to be that you could actually go in and watch movies being made. But if you find some sort of documentary that you could show your family on, the whole putting a movie together, okay, it's really, I know the documentaries are out there, it's really quite a process, but it takes the magic sort of out of the whole thing. I remember when I first saw Star Wars, and it was like really an awesome thing and everything. But then, you see that after that they had all these documentaries, how they made Star Wars, and you're seeing how they zoom the camera in on the replicas of the ships and stuff like that, and it sort of takes some of the fun out of it. Well, maybe though that you can't have this idea that Hollywood is real. You've got to keep in mind that the fantasy is here, the reality is here. It'll have less of an effect on you. All right? Now, the other thing I would say is news programs. They're probably some of the more dangerous things you watch on TV, the network news. I would personally say don't even watch network news programs. Okay, use alternative media. I mean, if you compare, at least if you're living in America, could you go try finding BBC or RT or something like that and see the quality of the interviews and the way they present the news, or go to the British press and check it out and see what their newspapers are like. Even the tabloids in England are far superior to the news, quote unquote, publications in America. Check it out. Take a look. Compare. And when you catch the propaganda, the subtle propaganda, point it out. Because basically what the whole thrust I'm trying to say here is question it. Okay? Delegitimize it. And make sure that the people in your family are as protected from TV when they're watching it, and their values safeguard as much as if you're going to Uganda, you better find out what you can do to avoid mosquito bites so that you can avoid malaria, because it's every bit as important. Anyway, that pretty much takes up our time here, and I thank you for tuning in. And I encourage you to be back here next week with us with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV. Take care now.